this us tonight?
Yeah. The one that never changes.
Yeah. I have begun to learn it through repetition. All right, let's call this meeting to order. Budget meeting for 2015 budget. Take the roll, please.
Branch.
Aye.
Bray. Bray. Costales.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Henry.
Here.
Hussey.
Here.
Mihalovich.
Here.
Prather. Scrivener.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Up to now, we have gone through, we've talked about all the departments' budgets, wishes, and wants, and learned a lot about the needs we have. We've also had a presentation on the 5-year projections, which kind of offers caution, perhaps, as we look at this budget and how it will affect future budgets. And I suppose, and then we have our parking lot that we can talk about. I imagine we'll be talking about that tonight as well. But I think we are perhaps at a position that we're ready to get down to some nitty-gritty. Nitty-gritty. Get down to the nitty-gritty and see how close we are to putting a budget together. Along those lines, and taking advantage of all this information as you have, I have also been visiting with Bill Betts from time to time, and taking into account each of our meetings that we have, and then going back and seeing what the budget might look like. And I got with Bill today, and we sat down and did the same thing. Where are we, and what kind of budget does it looks like we might be, the direction that we might be going in. So Bill has, he has prepared for us, I don't know if we'll look at it just yet, but he has prepared for us what I, in my attempt was to put together what I thought, what could be an agreeable budget. But I think before I get that out and present that, perhaps we ought to open the floor to see what thoughts or comments the council is having about if anyone has anything on their minds up to this point. Glenn, I know that you have a list of stuff that you might want to bring up. Rick already has a finger headed towards, So before we get to this, a budget that might work for us, I'll open the floor to anyone that might have comments, or Glenn, hold on a minute first, but we can address, you've had some things that you've wanted to talk about, and we haven't talked about it yet, so maybe we can do that this evening. And anyone else that has some thoughts about what our final budget might look like. Before we go down there, Rick, did you have something you wanted to say?
We didn't have our finance meeting this morning, but we did get an email. I just think just to clarify your email about what you would have reported had we had our finance meeting, and what's the good news on the fund balance, or what we expect to take back to the fund balance?
Basically, what I believe I said in the email was, right now for the year we're projecting, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but $1.3 million ahead of schedule ahead of projections on our revenues. So that's the number. Now, I don't know if that's the number that'll go back to the fund balance. Obviously, expenses come into play there. We have a little over $700,000 so far this year in supplemental appropriations. And if you look at the fund balance currently, the fund balance for 2014, not taking into account the 1.3 million because we don't know that for sure on the revenue side, but taking into account all the supplemental appropriations, we're sitting at about 14.5% is what our fund balance would be sitting at today, not taking into account the potential for those additional revenues if they come in the way they're projected.
Go ahead.
The follow-up on that is 1.3 million to the good on revenues. Do you have any kind of estimate of what the expense side of that's going to look like?
I think all the departments are doing a good job of staying under budget, and we're managing the numbers that we have. So I think we'll stay on the expense side within the budgeted amount there. So I feel pretty comfortable saying that. I think the department directors have done an excellent job. Will we put a lot back from the expense side? I would say no. I think we're fairly tight. So and we've had to work with some larger expenses that we weren't anticipating, but we've had areas where we could take care of those types of things. So there will be some money on the expense side, but it'll be pretty small amount.
Anyone else?
I do have a question.
All right.
Mr. Betts, so right now, do you anticipate any a major one-time expense that needs to come out of that now?
For currently for the rest
Yes.
of the year?
Yes. Because we keep looking at this 1.3
$3 million in additional
projection.
yeah.
But is there anything that the other maybe department heads have mentioned to you, Mr. Kroll, that's a one-time that we need right now?
The only thing that I know, and we're trying to operate within our expense budget, so we're moving the funding around. So right now, I don't think we anticipate coming back for any supplementals that we haven't already come back for. There is a couple of items we're working on in Public Works to do with street lighting and some things of that nature, but I think right now we're potentially going to have those covered. So as far as I know, that's I think we'll be able to do it with inside of the expense budget that we have. So.
Mr. Costalis, when you you have made a list, and on this budget that I worked on with Mr. Betts, it addresses some of those things. So let me get back to you again here in just a second. Mr. Scrivener, what did you have?
I was just curious, Bill, if we've got a couple of things that are kind of lingering. We have the police AC issue. There's a sinkhole that's developing over on the west side, and I understand there's one on the east side, and I know there's no cost estimates or anything like that. Has there been any reckoning as to, we've heard estimates as high as $1 million for the AC repairs in the police department. I don't think there's an extra $1 million in the capital expenditure budget, or, not capital expenditure, but the capital sales tax budget. So it probably would have to come out of general revenues, and I don't know if there's enough money to deal with the sinkhole on the west side or the east side. Have you plugged those kind of numbers into any of this long range stuff? I really am less worried about the 2015 budget than I am about 16 and 17 and some of the things we're getting ready to do in 15 that will affect 16, 17 and beyond. Have we done any of have we looked at any of that?
We've not looked at the sinkhole items, and I don't know. Matt might want to comment as to what he thinks the cost or maybe some of the things there. As far as the HVAC, we've had different discussions at the staff level. Obviously, we don't have an exact figure at this time. But one thought at the staff level is that it may have to become part of the CIP program for 2017, the new CIP program then, if it's in the $1 million range, or we would have to ask the council to take it out of fund balance. Those would be right now the two options to do that.
So at this point, it's not an emergency repair, urgent repair type thing. I know that people would like to have it done, and there's reasons to have it
Yeah.
done.
My answer to that is we're doing an assessment now and getting some information on costs and urgency. So,
All right, thanks.
Councilman, can I ask a question in regards to that? Where is this sinkhole?
It's
forming
over
at?
on Don Ray is one. It's on a street, and I'm not sure where the one on the east side is.
If I
It's
might,
wastewater.
and those are big concerns, but, we're trying to program those in the half-cent CIP sales tax for stormwater repairs, like we do every year, stormwater projects, and they are big projects. Now, they'll eat up a lot of that money, but there is money available for
So-
that in that half-cent sales tax, so that's a good thing, and,
Okay, and that was my question. So
yeah.
I know there is a certain amount of money that's programmed every year, and we
Sure.
would have some available.
Yeah, we've been looking at that, and we're going to update everybody here in a couple of weeks, the Public Works Committee, on those.
Okay.
And just on, this is hot off the press from Britt, we did get a preliminary report back on our HVAC, and I guess it is coming in a little less than we expected. We keep talking about $1 million, so it may not be quite that bad, but it's still going to be a high cost, so
Thank
still
you.
have to go through that.
I think what I'd like to, anyone else over here? I think what I'd like to do at this time, Bill, is let's present the result of my conversation with you today. And Glenn, what you'll see is it addresses some of your things.
Sure.
And if we do work with this document, there would be an opportunity. It would require a motion, and then there would also be an opportunity for amendments, and anything that you see that you would like to address or include or so on, you would have an opportunity at that time.
Sure.
So Sheila's going to hand this out, and you're going to recognize the format. And my purpose was to try to take advantage and incorporate a lot of our conversation and some of the things some of our conversation and some of our talking points and how they affect the budget and what we would like to do and what we can afford to do. So after Sheila passes this out, Bill will then go from the top and go through the bottom. I asked him to do that because he can explain this better than I can. So, Bill,
Okay.
when you are ready.
Yep, I'm ready.
You may proceed.
I know it's kind of small on the screen for those out there, so Sheila has some extra copies if you'd like to use those, and then the folks at home can. I think the camera zooms in on the screen there. But as Mr. Bray said, he came by and asked me to put together a plan. I mean, he gave me the information that he wanted on here, so he walked me through it. I put together this similar to what you see in the parking lot that we've normally had. So this is, as you can see, up in the right-hand corner in the green there, revenue minus expenses actually in this plan is to the good. So we would be putting $146,973.78 either back to the fund balance, or Mr. Bray has an idea of some other options I think he'll discuss for the future there of what he thinks we could utilize that funding for. He still, on the revenue changes side, he still has the $56,004.50. And that was based on the previous 36 months using October or using a September numbers, not using the most current October check. He has the chargeback from parking for the court part-time position still listed there. So, I mean, that has an offsetting expense. So if you take one out, you need to take them both out. Mr. Bray left them both in his proposal here. As far as the items, you can see there under the expense side, there's some items he wants to fund. The GPS for engineering is $18,900. The fund local match for historic preservation is $15,000. The citywide internship program is $27,558.40. And then the MPO funding, which is, we talked about that today, that's something we really kind of need to do just to keep up with the MPO the way they've done their budget. So they're actually going to be giving us, I think, $943 for our 116, and it gives us an accountable budget. Mr. Bray wanted to go ahead, and you can see there on the two eliminates the funding for the mayor and council and the funding for the mayor and council training and education. Those were negative numbers. He wanted to go ahead and put those back in the budget, so leave those in the budget. So we zeroed those out. there's the funding for the part-time court that goes to the revenue item up above. So those two items exist together. The finance director reorg savings we left in. Mr. Bray recommended removing the holiday. The number is slightly more than 60,000, but we just that's the it's like just a few $100s more. We can get that exact number. I just didn't have it at the time, and I should have gotten that. So my apologies. And then reduce the self-insurance from the budget. If you remember, there was talk when we were talking about the insurance that there's a $117,000 line item in the 10185 or the non-departmental account. We will need some of that money for the November and December to kind of finish out the year because that's based on the calendar year, not based on the budget year. So he removed 100,000, but we left 17,000 there to hopefully carry us through to the end of the year. There was some additional items that were funded on the parking lot that Mr. Bray wanted removed, the police officer position, the firefighter position, and the administrative HR position. He wanted those removed. If you see in the comments, I showed the numbers of what was on the parking lot there. So all total, Mr. Bray actually reduced the and he didn't add to the expenses. He actually reduced the mayor's proposed budget by $194,978 on the expense side, but also reduced the revenues by $48,004. So the way this proposal is sitting is there's $146,973 going back to fund balance.
And to explain some of my rationale, the revenue minus expenses in the green on the upper right, $146,973.78 would still be available during the course of the year for whatever we want to spend it on. If we want to spend it for a position, if we want to spend it on equipment or one-time costs. So we would have almost $147,000 kind of in our savings account that is available throughout the year that we can dip into whenever we would choose. In the GPS and the Historic Preservation Grant, the internship program, I believe there's perhaps not a preference, but perhaps people are in a agreement that those are good things if we can afford them, and also I think we all get a good return. We get for the GPS, we'll get a good return on that because we're going to trade old equipment for brand new equipment that's going to make our staff more efficient. The Historic Preservation Grant, which we haven't even applied for yet, the $15,000 is what we would need if we did get a grant, and I've already asked. Staff has, at my request, the staff asked State Historic Preservation Program to get some information from them on surveying some of the neighborhoods on the west side of town, historic neighborhoods. And the advantage there is with the National Register Historic District, and providing that pride in the neighborhood and the reinvestment in the neighborhood and the rise in property values that results because it becomes a very, very desirable area. So that can be justified. And then we also heard some very good things about the internship program that it is funded at $27,500, but we heard comments about the return we get on that also. And then going down to the fire position and the police position that are on the parking lot, and with my proposal here, I'm taking them off the parking lot, and I'm not funding them at this time. But I would, with this plan, what I would propose is that we send those two topics. We send that police officer position, we send the firefighter position, and send it to Public Safety Committee. I'm concerned that in this venue here with preparing the budget, I just think it's we're going through this notebook with volumes and volumes and volumes of figures and accounts and line items. I just don't know that this is a good place to make a commitment, a long-term commitment to new employees, especially at a time when we know we need to be watching our pocketbooks now and over the next several years. So what I would ask is that we send the possibility of a police officer and a firefighter, and send that to the safety committee, and ask our safety committee to look at that and to come back to the council and let us know if it's something that we need to look seriously at or need to do with this budget or not. And then we can add it. If it's the decision of this council, we can add those at any time during the year. And if we do, maybe that's what that $147,000 helps to fund for this particular budget. So that's the rationale I used to put this together. There's to discuss this further. Well, we could have some questions, but we can have some questions on it. But eventually, we're going to need to have a motion on the floor to talk about the parking lot that we have talked about up to this point, and make changes to it through amendments and discussion. Or we can, or if it's your preference, we can have questions about this, but eventually we would need a motion to forward so we can make amendments and changes if we choose to. So I offer this as a working document, a tool for us tonight that we can use or we don't need to use. Mr. Mihalovich?
I'll move that we place this, I move that we adopt this budget with the addition of the fire and police on this as my motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept this.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll wait until they. Yeah, you can go ahead and put them in there at 53,290.
Mr. Scrivener?
Well, I just want to speak to the, in regard to public safety, I think I'm satisfied to the degree at which we have that need, and I appreciate your conservative approach on this budget. But I think in talking to the chiefs, I feel like we have enough justification and enough in this budget to fund those positions. And I would even ask the mayor, upon his proposal of the budget, what he thought about when he didn't initially include that, if he should so speak on that behalf.
Thanks, Rick, or Mr. Chairman.
No, his is a straight
No,
motion.
it's he made it with those changes in mind.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Mihalovich did was to make a motion to adopt this budget with 2 changes to it. So I think it is a proper motion for discussion at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick, to answer your question, and Rick and I talked about this a few days ago. If I think Steve and I can't speak for Steve, but as we were working all summer, throughout the summer on the budget, if we would have realized that the Bill Betts combination was going to happen, we had an idea that that was obviously something that could happen, as we all did. And congratulations, Bill, on your position. Personally, if I would have had that savings, I definitely would have looked at the fire and police positions that I mentioned before here a few weeks ago, that I'd found out after I'd presented my budget to you that it was the intention of our administration a couple of years ago. I found out by some of our people that are here tonight in the audience that they would not lose those positions. So that's more than likely what I would have done at the time if I would have had that money. And I would also add, I personally would not remove the holiday. I think the holiday is something that's needed by our staff, our federal, state, and county employees. All in Cole County currently have President's Day off. Matter of fact, us as a council, from what I can remember over the last 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, have not met on President's Day because we've all had something, for the most part, that we had to attend that night. We've met on that Tuesday, but I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Rick.
Mr. Scrivener?
I have a question for the chief. In discussing this budget, there's two chiefs, so I guess Chief Schrader. In discussing the proposed budget and the request for an additional officer position, one of the responses that I got from an individual was that we have not been able, over the last few years at least, to fill the positions that are authorized, that are budgeted. And I guess my question is that a correct statement, or do we have authorized positions, budgeted positions, that are currently not filled and that have not been filled for a while?
First, I'd like to make the point that these are not new. This is not a new position. I think that was stated twice. This is that is a position that was vacated during the SIP program. We had a retirement of a police officer, and that position remains open from, I believe it was April of 2013 through the present. So that position corresponds to that retirement. The reason we have a lot of vacancies is we suffered 9 retirements last year and several more this year. We average maybe not quite 2 retirements a year, so that did result in kind of a hole that we're digging out of. There wasn't any particular reason for the number of vacancies other than those retirements. It was a very unusually large number, promoted by the SIP program and the revenue issues and the encouragement of employees to retire, coupled with coincidence. So the vacancies are the result of retirements, and
how many
it will take a while to, recover from that.
So how many vacancies do we have right now?
We could presently fill 7.
You've filled 7, or there are 7
We have
exist
7
now?
vacancies we're trying to fill.
Okay.
Presently, we're in the middle of a process now.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that leads me to a question of why is it necessary to add? And you say we're not adding, and I'll agree to that. We're not adding, but why is it necessary to fund this position if you have positions that are unfilled now?
Well, all I would do is speculate. We're in the middle of a process now. We could, and we may not, fill those positions with this present process. We have more finalists than we do positions. But that's not a guarantee that we'll fill all those positions. We will begin another process probably in December or January, anticipating the May Academy. So we certainly want to fill all those positions either now or by January of 15. But other than that, it's a crystal ball guess. So yes, we have a lot of positions. Yes, we could fill up, and maybe not, and that's just the best I can do.
So most of your vacancies that were created through the SIP program and retirement were probably either commanding officer staff or non-coms, I guess, sergeants. I don't know what you refer to them to in
They
police
were all
vernacular.
ranks and different divisions. It was a diverse group.
But I presume that you've filled those command staff from within the department. So what you've done is you've opened positions at the entry level, and that's what you'll be trying to fill with it. This is obviously entry level funding, I presume.
Yes, it is. And yes,
Okay.
we would.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hussey?
Steve, going to put you on the spot. You know, you presented a budget to us, and you clearly could have, finance certain things and put certain things in the budget. You made a decision to not fund certain staff positions and to not fund certain capital purchases. And so if I came to you and said we have $146,000 to spend, do you in your mind have a priority as to where you would spend those funds?
Well, I didn't not include those positions in the budget because of need. I think all those positions, including the human resources one, are needed. My exercise was really an exercise in trying to look at the operational piece and balance the budget based on that. We did several things to make that balance out, one of which we talked about last time was moving some of the police cars into sales tax. So it's not an operational decision there. Now, the question, if you're asking me, are they needed? I'd say yeah. I mean, all of them I think are, and plus more. I think we're low probably on public works. I think it becomes a level of service kind of a discussion.
And then my follow-up to that would be, and you've told us, I think, a number of times, you're 6 months in, and I feel like you've worked and we've filled some vacancies. But my sense is that you want to take some time to evaluate the workforce in general for the city, whether that be salaries, alignment, and certain things. Do you have plans in place to start to get through the first budget, but take a broader look at how we're structured in terms of our workforce and where maybe things are high, low, and need to be realigned?
Well, I certainly did try some of that as part of this budget process. We made some adjustments and have done that throughout the last 6 months. I think that there are some things that we need to look at, one of which I mentioned was a classification and compensation plan. It's not something that I can do. It's not something that staff can do. That takes some expertise. There's also things that can be done as far as looking at various operational components of the various departments, so we can certainly do that as well. But I tried talking about the transit, having that strategic piece done, and look at some of the staffing related to that and some of the pieces there. So made some of those recommendations, talked about some of those. So if you're asking me if we're going to go through next year and make some adjustments on personnel, yes. How that applies to police and fire, they probably need them. I mean, you got a contractual obligation by fire that lists a number of people. Police, I don't know how we came up with that number, but there's a number there.
And I guess it would follow up, just to conclude real quick, is that I kind of liked Ralph's or Councilman Bray's suggestion a little bit of, I'm not in disagreement on funding some of these staff positions, but it can feel kind of in this process crammed through, and those are ongoing commitments. I don't want to say that we don't commit to doing that, but I want to make sure that we make alterations to the budget if we're going to make amendments and add things, and we add staff that are ongoing positions, that maybe we do so in a more wholesale way, that there are other positions that were brought forth in this process in pink sheets that didn't make it to the parking lot, and it could be they didn't make it to the parking lot just because nobody made the motion, or we weren't feeling like adding anything that night because we added a few other things, street workers in particular. And so I wonder if we've got a solid budget in place that can probably maintain, and I don't mean to kick the can down the road on some of these staffing things, but if we leave ourselves a little bit of surplus in the budget here, it could be that maybe we take a little bit of a focused effort to identify some of these potential positions that need to be filled and strategically, allocate our resource properly. And so, I don't know how to rank a street worker versus an HR administrative assistant versus a police officer versus a firefighter, because I think every department director that came forth and made a case for those positions did so telling us they were essential to the department and they're important to the operations and functions of the city and the services to the citizens. Just because we may or may not add them in this budget process doesn't mean that we're excluding or we're preventing the ability to do so later. It just means that we need to pass a budget to move forward, and we want to explore that. We could certainly pass a budget, move forward, but also make a motion or resolution, whatever the case may be, to say, but within a tight time frame, we want to explore some of these vacancy issues and come up with a plan, and we set aside some funding to do so to get us through 15 and maybe do so and think long term on that issue as well. So I throw that out just to say I'm not necessarily, I don't want that to come across that I don't think there's need in these departments. I guess it's just hard to figure out, where is maybe the greater need to maintain that level of service, and I want to make sure we as a council do our job to thoroughly investigate all of that.
Can I just add something? Following up on your prior question, and it's probably could be a misunderstanding on my part. The SIP positions, to me, were not funded positions. Now, if there was some kind of an understanding that those are to come back in the budget, or always going to be there or something, that may be fine. You can put them on a piece of paper somewhere, but I didn't have those in there because they weren't funded. And I think, of anything, that to me is important, that we at least make it clear what positions are funded and which ones aren't. The other thing is, as far as priorities on that list, I'd say the internship probably is not as high a priority as some of those other positions. But
Councilman, can I just one more thing real quick in the prioritization? Sorry, is that even we've added a firefighter to the list, but our fire chief indicated to us that he felt like the fire training officer was a higher priority. And so we've already done a little prioritization based on the prioritization that our department staff have given to us. And I guess I just want to make sure that we don't make some quick decisions here in this budget process that lock us into funding these things, as opposed to pass a budget, move things forward, and continue that conversation in a tight time frame to get some resolution on those things and focus on some of these things and not just fund to fund and move on and pass a budget.
Just a moment, Mr. Graham. And after Mr. Graham, I'll get you to Mr. Costalis. First, I have a question for Mr. Hilpert. So is the budget the main the proposal to accept the budget is the main motion, and at place and adding the two positions is the amendment? So we are discussing the amendment?
No, I believe the motion was
The budget with
this document with the police and fire added.
All right. Mr. Graham.
I just wanted to follow back up what Councilman Scrivener had asked Chief Schrader as relates to the number of positions that's open in the police department. And just as someone who has served on the police personnel board for about 7 years, I will say that is a process in which it does take time to get the right officers in those positions. And it can take up to 9 months to, if you have a pool of applicants of maybe 120 applications, you might not only get 4 or 5 people out of that pool. So it is going to take time to hire those officers. But what I do hope that we're not talking about not funding a firefighter position or police officer position, and I do not want to send that back to committee. I want to approve that during our budget process, and I'm also in tune of also hiring a training officer for the fire department as well. As I look at one, making sure we have a balanced budget, but also number 2, making sure that that we as a community feel safe, and that's funding our public safety positions. So I think we all want to be safe. We want to feel safe, and so I do not want to send it back to a committee. I would love to go ahead and vote it up or vote it down, and I hope that we can vote it up, and that if they do get the right number of applications in the process, then they can hire for the police officer. I think that is certainly needed for our city. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Costales.
Thank you, Councilman Bray. I agree with most of the things that you put forth, but as you mentioned, right now we are in a tight financial time, and I think things like the internship and historic preservation, we need to scratch those, and if there's money available down the road, relook at those. Chief Schofield did stress that he needed a training officer more than he needed a fireman, and the training officer comes in at just under $78,000, but right now we're paying captains a 4% bonus to pick up those duties, so we would save about $10,000 there when that goes away. So even though it's right at 78, it's knock off about $10,000 off that. Same as with the firemen. If we hire a fireman, about, Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was it in the 20 to 25% we would save on his on the overtime that's being covered now?
That's a real tough number to nail down, but I think for the initial firefighter, we're looking around 10 to maybe 15% at the most.
So if you look at hiring a entry-level firefighter, his cost about 10 to, like the chief said, 10 to 15% of that cost is going to be reduced overtime costs that we're paying out now. So there's a small savings there again. And I'd like to put forth also, we talked about this before, the $85,000 coming back from Columbia for the airport thing. We use those monies to buy equipment or repair things. That's a one-time influx of funds. Let's use it for one-time expenses. I mean, Public Works needs some brush hog attachments. They need some snow plow, dump truck type things, rehab to about $35,000. So we could use it for stuff like that. And that's what I'm proposing on those. And those nice things to have, public art, we can cut that budget. Historic preservation internship, nice programs to have if we're flushing funds, and we're not flushing funds at this time.
Mr. Henry?
Thank you. And I went back and forth with this as far as these positions go. I definitely understand that the position of each department when it comes to these. I would be inclined to add the training officer position instead of the firefighter position. As Chief Schofield did mention that that was probably the higher priority. Also, the police officer position, and simply because what you also have to understand is that, you know, at any time, as long as that process is to hire police officers, they could have police officers leave, they could have police officers retire during that process. And quite frankly, I know Councilman Graham mentioned 9 months, but typically, really, you really push that up to a year to get an officer fully trained. So I would propose possibly, well, still adding the police officer position and then adding the, as Councilman Costales mentioned, the firefighter training position. Thank you.
The motion on the floor is to accept this budget with the fire position and with the fire position and the police position. If that is approved, then all we've done is accepted this as a document to continue discussing. We've not approved the budget.
I thought I was making a motion to approve the budget as this
That's what I wrote down.
That's what I wrote down too, to approve the budget.
So,
Well, that would wrap it up then, I guess, if you opposed, if you voted.
well, that's what I'm trying to get clear in my head.
Councilman Bray had asked me that, and I I didn't hear that, but Lindsay is definitely nodding yes.
So
he'd be done.
So the motion is to accept this with those two positions.
Yes.
So that motion can be amended with other
That's true.
additions or subtractions.
Sure. Until the meeting's closed, you could still continue to.
For example, and just to use this as an example, Mr. Henry could move to amend. I think someone mentioned the training officer instead of the firefighter. So someone could move to amend the motion to substitute training officer for a firefighter.
Sure.
Or someone could move to amend the motion by adding a truck or something. Correct?
That'd be right. And it's always probably worth pointing out, it's not done until you vote on next Monday.
Yeah.
too, so.
What happens next Monday?
A week from Monday, sorry, when it's actually approved at the council.
I see. So, yeah, what this committee does is approves a budget to forward to the council.
Right, right.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Scribner.
I've just done a little back of the envelope math, so my figures could be off some. But it appears to me that if we amended Mr. Mahalovich's motion to remove the internship program and Mr. Costales' suggestion that we do away with the historic preservation grant, you could fund from the available monies, you could fund the police officer position, the firefighter position, or excuse me, the training officer position, the firefighter position, and the administrative position for HR, and have money left over. You would have, right now, if you were to fund the police officer, firefighter, and HR position from available funds with no other adjustments, you'd still have a $15,479 surplus. And if you added to that the $27,000 from intern program and the other $15,000 from, or excuse me, if you added the other $15,000 preservation grant, you could fund the training officer instead of the local firefighter or the starting firefighter position. But if you decide to fund them both, you're going to have to look for more money.
Mr. Bray, just to make sure we're clear, on the fire training officer, the cost for that is $89,559.80. So that's the cost for the starting level of the fire training officer. So just want to make sure we have it.
We've got a document here that says 77.
872.
Was that from me?
This is actually from Chief.
Okay.
Does that include benefits?
I'm not
30%?
sure, but if you take benefits and everything into
training
account,
officer
savings
staff
that you were-
position 77,872.
Does that include
with
this-
adjustment, all benefits?
yeah, for us it's 89,559.80.
Well,
so.
in that case, you just ate up that extra money.
Yes, sir. So.
But you had some savings, some overtime, and some things that you mentioned.
Yeah. Now, if you take into account if you take into account the three firefighters that got the 4%, maybe that would be 77. I'm not sure where that, but 89 is the number that it would
Police
be.
overtime.
And that's for the bottom of the range for that position. It's a level 20 position. Starting salary is 56.8 roughly. So.
Okay, so that.
Mr. Scribner, did you offer comments and discussion, or did you offer an amendment?
Kind of wait. They're just
Well, I would prefer to, let me think how I would word this amendment. I would amend Mr. Mahalovich's motion to fund the police officer position, and I don't know the numbers on the training officer, but I'm going to assume we could find the money.
It's up there, yes.
The training officer position and the HR position, and remove the citywide internship program and a local match for historic preservation grant. I think that will be enough to cover that, and if I'm wrong, I apologize.
So your amendment you're offering
again to fund the three positions at the bottom of the page.
Okay.
But the firefighter position being the training officer as opposed to firefighter. Okay.
Can we take those one at a time? For example.
Okay, so we're talking 53,292 for the police officer. 89, did you say?
89,559.80.
89,590.
559.80.
980.
So let me see if I can understand. Maybe see if I have this, Mr. Scribner. So the police position is already in the motion, so we need not.
Yes,
Correct.
it is in there, so we wouldn't have to change that.
So you're offering and did you want to substitute
and I would amend it to indicate a training officer position as rather than a firefighter position.
Okay, and then thirdly,
I would add the HR position at 48,615.06.
Okay.
I would remove the fund the local match for historic preservation grant at 15.
Right.
And I'd remove the citywide internship program at 27,558. My
right.
logic behind that is, if we add an intern position, we're going to add more workload to the HR department, and they're already short-staffed. I think they would benefit, and the city would benefit more from having an HR assistant than the city would benefit from having an internship program.
All right, just a moment, please. Madam Clerk, could you read that back, please? The amendment?
Need a second.
Right.
Second.
And then once we get it read back, then we can discuss it.
I have a motion to amend Mr. Mahalovich's motion to fund fire training officer rather than a full-time firefighter and an HR administrative assistant, and to remove the internship program and local match for historic preservation grant.
Okay, everyone? That's
Just
the amendment on the floor?
should we have included removing the 4% from the 'cause that's what was talked about earlier? That because right now you're in a negative if you at the current rate that we're at.
How much are we negative?
Yeah, about almost 2,000.
Okay, yes, I guess. What 4% are we talking about?
Overtime.
No. There's three firefighters who received a 4% bump to do the training to be the training officers
absolutely.
for their.
Yes. And
If you
let
have
somebody
it, that's
else
fine.
amend my
I
motion
don't
to
have
do
that.
that.
There you go.
If I can do that, I would include that in my motion. If Larry will go ahead and second that inclusion.
I'll second that.
So let's get this written down here right quick, and then we'll. All right. Would you read that back now, please?
A motion to amend Mr. Mahalovich's motion to fund the full-time training officer position rather than the firefighter position, and removing the 4% bonus given to the three fire captains, funding the HR administrative assistant, and removing the internship program and local match for historic preservation grant.
Mr. Brashton, do you have a comment? Okay. Mr. Hussey, please.
I have a few concerns. One, on the HR side of things, we discussed, I know there were some part-time options within that department still, and I'm not disagreeing that we could argue there's not a need for some of these things. But, I think we put that on the parking lot, but we sort of, if I recall, put it on the parking lot, and I think I had expressed some reservations at that time to say, is there a way to fill this with part-time, shared positions, and kind of desiring to see if Steve and the administration couldn't take a greater look at that. And I still come back to it in terms, we're prioritizing some of these positions here tonight, basically because we have a number up here and we're kind of figure we've got some money to work in and get there. We didn't put some street worker positions in the parking lot, and I didn't make a motion to do so, but at the same time, what we heard from Matt at that time was about service and fulfilling that level of service, and we all, I think, kind of nodded and agreed, but I would think we could certainly tell that there's probably a need just as much in that department as there is in a lot of other departments. And so, again, I don't disagree that those positions aren't necessarily needed. I think they're important. I guess maybe I feel like we're shooting from the hip on some of this tonight to fill some of these things in. And I know we've thought about it for a long time, but I don't know if we're necessarily making the wisest decisions tonight just to get those positions in the budget. Nothing prohibits us from taking a little bit of time on some of these things. Now that we've got some savings from the combination of an IT and finance director, now that our projections maybe are a little bit higher on the revenue side of things, it's all coming very quickly, that nothing prohibits us from coming back in 2 months' time and saying, okay, 14 is closed out. We know where 14 ended. We know we have need in about 8 of these positions. What's our strategy to fill them, as opposed to us sort of adding them to the parking lot based on the order in which those departments presented to us? Does not mean that I don't disagree that those positions need to be funded. I guess I'm just sort of worried that there may be some other pink sheet positions in here that we're disregarding for whatever reason.
Mr. Scrivener?
To be honest with you, this may surprise you to hear me say this after I just offered a motion to amend that. I agree with you more than I do passing it tonight. But given the choice between the original amendment and funding, or the original motion and funding, I would rather fund the way I'm proposing to amend it than I would to fund it the way it was originally offered. And just watching body language and everything, I think it was getting ready to probably pass. And that's why, if it's going to pass tonight, if we're going to vote to fund these tonight, I would rather fund them as amended than fund them as initially offered. But to be honest with you, I'd rather wait, because we worked very, very hard in a couple of emergency, more or less, budget sessions to try to react to some dire financial situations. And as I've told Councilman Mahalovic in telephone conversations over the last couple of days, I hope we don't, as you put it, see this number up here and say, oh, gee whiz, we've got all this money, let's figure out how to spend it. I hope we don't undo some of the work. I know Mr. Kroll made the comment earlier. He said that SIP positions are not, they're in essence, they're no longer authorized, because that's why you do voluntary separation programs, is because you want to adjust your personnel and the number of personnel you have, people in personnel. Now, whether that's the best way to do it or not, you don't always lose the employee that maybe you might choose to lose. But, I do think that there's a need to do an overall evaluation of our staffing and of the jobs that need to be done and how people are being compensated. I think I heard Mr. Kroll intimate that we have some employees that are underpaid. And maybe we have some that are overpaid. I don't know, but it's a lot harder to adjust downward than it is to adjust upward. Well, if that's the case, what if we do a compensation study next year and we find out that we need another $500,000 to compensate where the market is? What we do tonight could very much affect our ability to do that. And so I just don't think we ought to be real cavalier about looking at a number up here and saying, oh, gee, we've got the money, let's spend it.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, I actually have a question to put Steve on the spot, because that's why he's here, right? After 30 years. Steve, when you brought forth the budget to me, the HR position was not in there. Could you tell us why?
Same reason some of the other ones weren't in there. It's just a matter of trying to balance the budget and understanding the challenges that I thought the city had gone through prior with some of the budget, and understanding that people are a big piece of that. So I didn't have the police officer position, didn't have the firefighter, didn't have all that SIP positions that were in there. Now some of those I don't think are needed, but so as I said earlier, it wasn't based on an operational need. It wasn't based on an operational need. I think there's probably are operational needs for many of those positions. So hopefully that answers that one. I'm going to make an editorial comment, and part of the reason we're here tonight is to make these decisions. I've got all the department directors. We've been talking about it. What questions do you have? I mean, we'll gladly answer them. We're ready and here.
Mr. Mihalovich.
Since we're on the night of putting people on the spot, I'd like to have any comment that the fire chief chooses to make with regard to those positions and the need for. And we put you on the spot the other day, and
now you're being quoted. So do you have a take on that?
I'm guessing you're specifically referring to the fire training officer position. I do. For us in our industry, training touches so many things for us. And so I think that while we all understand the need for boots on the ground, and that's always a critical gap to fill, from a training perspective, that touches everything else that we do operationally. So for me, knowing that not just those 3 people that we've given the incentive, the 4% incentive, to cover some of those responsibilities, we've all absorbed a lot of those responsibilities. But what it really takes is someone that can be there consistently and someone that can deliver that high quality of training. So as an industry, training has become a priority, to be honest, and it touches, like I said, operations. It touches our standards and licensures. It touches all the compliance issues that we have to adhere to. But administratively, too, it also covers some fireground responsibilities. And so I would just say that for us, a bad day for the fire department can look a lot different. Really, a bad day for anybody in public safety looks different than it may for another type of service. So when you talk about expectation of service, and specifically not being able to meet the public's expectation for service, that's probably why you see us fight as hard as we do for those public safety type of positions.
I'm sorry, but I got to jump in here. I don't want to pit one department against another. I firmly believe that the other services that the departments provide, HR, accounting, are just as important for providing those other services. One of the things we tried to do, and Matt hasn't had an opportunity to be involved in that, but is to have all the departments understand that we're all in this, that the firefighter on the street is dependent upon the accounting and the HR and all the other services, including janitorial. So they're all important. So I hope we don't get pitting one department against another all over the budget process. We ought to be able to stand up and justify those positions based on numbers, based on operations. You want to talk about safety, then tell me how much more safety I get out of those positions. But we don't want to pit each other against it.
Mr. Costalis?
Mr. Kroll, Ms. Strope, my question is going to deal with another individual being moved into HR, and if we were to fund that part-time person so that you would have them for the full year, why was it another $2,600 or something? Would that negate the need for a full-time HR assistant?
I'm going to take a shot at it, and Gail can respond accordingly. If you're saying we've got a person in finance that has some capacity, I think, to be able to do some things. Some of those could be finance things. Some of those could be fire department things, and we talked about having somebody as a backup for administrative. So there are several of those kinds of things once we get a decision made. That's not as many hours as a full-time or a half-time person in human resources. Part of the human resources piece is there's just things that don't get done. It just takes longer, and some things that don't get done, and obviously the priority things get done. So if we had a half-time person, there would just be more of that stuff that gets accomplished. If we had 2 part-time people, that would be more, and that's 2 part-time is going to be less overall than a full-time, 1 full-time. Does that answer the question, or no?
Yes, because I know there was conversation of somebody else being moved over there and bringing some of their work, but possibly being able to help out with some of the HR stuff, and
right,
trying to get a clarification on that.
It does. It's not a full time. It's not a full half time. It's not that full time, but that it's just taking some additional capacity that person may have. I don't know. It's something we would want to test out. See.
Thank you,
Mr. Hussey.
Mr. Kroll, I feel like our conversations really started to focus in on personnel a lot on these parking lot items.
Sounds like it, yeah.
And
appropriately so. That's 80% of our budget. That's the big stuff. You bet.
I understand that, but a lot of the pink sheets also included, in some departments prioritized, equipment or vehicles higher than they did staffing. And so, if you
it's hard to have a person doesn't have a truck to drive.
$150,000 in the budget, there's a prioritization piece there. And obviously in your budget that you presented to the mayor and the mayor's budget to us, you didn't choose to fund certain positions, and I understand that. And I think maybe what I'm looking for a little bit tonight is not to pit departments against each other, but if the decision is made to take some of those savings or some of this excess revenue and apply it towards personnel, I'm looking to you to help us prioritize, to a certain extent, some of these as well, because you administer the city, you're working with these departments. My hope would be that we can certainly have reaction to the department directors, the chiefs, and such about, is this one more important than this one? But you can go through. There's 2 street workers in here. There's a GIS worker within IT. There's a part-time and full-time in HR. There's a lot of positions in there, and if we want to work through this, we've got the directors here tonight. I guess I would fire it back to you and say, is there a prioritization that you have in your mind? I mean, you've said they're all important. You said they're all essential. We can't fund them all.
Yeah, well, I don't know which all we're talking about. If you're talking about the SIP positions, I didn't say those were all important. The ones that you asked me what I would do, I gave you the budget with the positions in it that I would fund. Now, if there's extra money you want to spend, fire and police are important. My point was that in order to get fire and police, you've got to have the other services too, human resources and custodial and clerk and all of those kinds of things. So I'm more than happy to tell you, as I said, police and fire are obviously safety positions, they're important. But there's also the equipment piece, which I said earlier, I think is a time bomb that we're sitting on, that if we don't address, we're going to have a very big dollar amount facing us, facing you. So ask me if that isn't clear enough. I'll tell you which positions. I'm
going to ask the clerk to read the amendment again, and then we'll go to Mr. Scrivener.
Okay, the amendment was to fund a full-time training officer for the fire department rather than a full-time firefighter, remove the 4% bonus given to the 3 fire captains, fund the HR administrative assistant, remove the internship program, and remove the local match for historic preservation grant.
Mr. Scrivener, and then Mr. Mahal.
Okay, I want to follow up a little bit on what Mr. Kroll said and Mr. Hussey. It kind of interfaces with what you and I were talking about today, Mr. Mahalovic. And it even ties into what Mr. Maresh said earlier in his presentation about levels of service and about when you add an employee, you have an incremental improvement, I presume, in service. At least you anticipate that you're going to. But what is the cost of that incremental increase, and what does that incremental increase really amount to? And who sets the standards? You sent us a piece today, an email today, and we're talking about outcome-based culture, if you will. And so I guess one of the thoughts that went through my mind is that if we remove snow from the streets, for instance, and we do it in X amount of time, whatever number you want to have, is that the level of service? That's the level of service that the staff has come to expect to deliver, but is that the level of service that the public really wants? And if we're providing a higher level of service there, and you can go through every other service we provide in the city, whether it's fire protection, police protection, whatever it is, and if that level of service is beyond, if we're funding it beyond what it needs to be, then in essence we're wasting money there that might be spent better somewhere else. And so that's why I tend to agree with what Councilman Hussey says about doing this according to a plan and doing it according to an evaluation. Now, this budget process came along before you've been here long enough to put some of that into practice, and you're telling us tonight that those positions are needed, and they probably are. But it seems to me that we owe it to the public to take a look at the levels of service that we're providing, and not let staff necessarily set a policy for what kind of service they're going to provide because it makes them feel good to provide service at that level.
Right.
But actually, as a council, set that level of service based on what the public deserves and expects to receive. I've heard, and I'm not quibbling with this number, but I've heard that we have a expectation of, what is it, 3.5 minutes from the time a call comes in for a fire response. We have an expectation of 3.5 minutes to be on site. Is that what it takes? Maybe it should be 2.5 minutes. Maybe it should be 5 minutes. You know, I understand that if a fire burns for an extra minute and a half, it could be significant. You know, maybe somebody dies because of that. I don't know. But I'm using that only because that number's been quantified. I'm using fire. But shouldn't there be numbers like that for every service we provide, essentially? I mean, for instance, snow response. If we're spending $250,000 a year for snow removal, and that is a 10 or 15% better level of service than what the public expects or needs. You know, you made the point in there. Shouldn't we be measuring whether or not people are dying on slick roads as opposed to how much sand we put on the street, or how long it took us to get the snow off? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I certainly agree with all your comments. The level of service discussion is a decision that the city council makes. Now staff makes recommendations based on what that past has been or what we think is, or in the case of fire where you have an employment agreement that says you will have 19 people on. That's a level of service decision right there. That's an easy one because it says 19. You can count up 19. If you don't have it, you fill it with overtime. So there's some of those decisions that have been made in different ways.
Mr. Mihaljevic and then Mr. Henry.
I'd like to amend the amended motion on the floor.
We have an amendment on the floor.
He's amending the amendment, which
All
I
right.
think is proper.
All right.
And I'd like to do that by striking out everything after the 4%.
I don't know that.
Essentially what the amendment would read is that we're replacing the firefighter position with a training and saving the 4% on the 3 salaries, and then the rest is struck.
And
Did-
be more specific with what is struck, please.
The struck is
You're talking about.
citywide internship that was
Okay,
previously the preservation grant and HR position.
Just to make sure, so you would add back in the first 2 items, the grant and the internship program, but you would remove the HR position.
Right. Oh wait. No.
You said take out, right?
Everything below. Just the firefighter is what I'm.
But so you would leave out the grant and or would you put them back in the
Yeah, I'm leaving.
leaving them at 0? You would not.
No.
You would fund them. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think we're on the same page.
But I guess
Yes.
I didn't cheat that.
Gotcha. No.
We'll let the clerk read that back when she's ready.
Yes, it was. Always on the board. Remove the HR position.
All right, Madam Clerk, the
let's try
amendment to
this.
the amendment, please.
Okay. Amending the amendment to replace the full-time firefighter with the full-time training officer, removing the 4% bonus given to the 3 fire captains, and adding back in to the budget the local match for historic preservation grant and the internship program.
And he took out the
HR
And
position.
yes, remove the HR administrative assistant position.
You got it.
Is there a second? No, it took.
The police officer position, did you leave that in, or?
Yes.
Can I explain the motion?
Not yet. No, not just yet. Well, you can make that clarification, please.
I'll second it
think
for sake of discussion.
Okay. I think the police officer is still in there. It's, yeah. Did you want to speak on that?
Yes, is all I'm doing here is just going from a firefighter position to the training officer and this 4% savings. That's all this does.
Mr. Henry, do you?
And excuse me, I don't necessarily disagree with the amendment. I just think it went too far for me.
Mr. Henry, do you have anything?
No, Councilman Howell just kind of blew up what I was looking
Mr. Hussey, you're not
But now we're 61,000.
So we have an amendment and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Scrivener?
Are we 61,000 in the red with that amendment?
Well, you're 13,000 up the green up there in the right-hand corner, because we have revenues that we also cut as part of this recommendation.
So 13,000 in the...
To the good.
To the good.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Ward?
This is my first budget process, and I would like to thank all the directors that presented here, because it not only allowed me the opportunity to learn about your department, but it also allowed me the opportunity to get to meet you also. But I've been kind of quiet and listening to all these discussions and trying to feel my way through the weeds here. I really think it's important to fund the positions that deal with public safety. I was concerned when Captain Schofield said he would rather have a training officer, and then we voted to do a firefighter. I worked for 16 years in continuing education, very closely with MU FERDY and with MU LETI, and I know the importance of continuing education in those areas. It affects everything. The safety of who you're serving, the safety of your colleagues, the response time, using the equipment. So that being said, I'm very happy that the 89 is added for the fire training officer. I know when our police chief said that he was missing a position for through the SIPS loss, he said he would have to take a position from somewhere else to fill an officer position, and that would affect that area that he took from. I would hate to see that either, because we have a very quick response police department, and I would hate to see that service go downhill also. Our HR director, I feel for her. I think if you could explain the ratio you have between your number of employees to what you serve. I think the ratio you would like, they say, is be 3 to 200, and you have 3 for everyone.
Yeah, actually it's 1 to 100, and our ratio is like 1 to 244, I think it was. I have to find the copy of it here. So even if I had that position filled, I still wouldn't be at that ratio, nor would I be at the same ratio as cities like Columbia and Joplin that we've compared to, that are very comparable as far as services offered and that type of thing. So,
okay. I'd have to say that I don't agree with the level that's being proposed in the salary for that position. But I do see that need for that position, and I would support that also. Regarding the vacancies due to SIP, the 4 in Public Works, I know that Matt shared with us that those 4 positions, they have developed workarounds, so there's no overtime accruing for those. We would love to be able to fill all the positions that are needed, and all departments are very important, but again, public safety, I think, should be up there at the top. Trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to share. Oh, I'm a big supporter of historic preservation. I wear that on my forehead. But because of the need for these public service positions, I don't feel at this time we should have in this budget the grant for the West Main National Register recognition. Down the line, if we happen to get that grant and it was brought to the City Council, we'd have the opportunity then to decide if we wanted to. And I think it was 13,000 was the match, not 15. And I would love to be able to fund the the internship position program. That is a high dollar item in my eyes, but it will create more work. I know there's a lot of benefit to the city and those that are going through the program, but again, I feel that public safety positions rank higher than that. That's all I have.
Other discussion on the amendment, to the amendment, to the motion? If not, well, excuse me, Mr. Costales.
I'd like to amend the amendment to the amendment. I think that's where we're at, right? Is to unfund historic preservation and internship programs.
Mr. Chairman, and Drew help out. I'm going to say, isn't Robert's rules you can amend an amendment, but you can't amend and amend and amend? I'm thinking you can amend an amendment, but I don't think you can amend an amendment to an original motion.
Do we just need to vote and then go back and make
That would probably be much easier.
Let's do that. Then we can go back and change.
Mr. Scrivener?
Get something up there.
One thing we don't want to overlook, and maybe we've clarified this, but are we voting to accept this motion as a working document? Like you said, we have to vote Monday night or whatever for final acceptance of the budget, but as I understood the original motion, which has been amended 3 times now, we were voting to accept the budget as presented with these changes.
I think the answer is yes, you would be adopting that as the new budget. However, until we adjourn tonight, you all can still make other motions.
So if we go ahead and vote and establish that as the new working document, then we can still amend it however.
Until you adjourn tonight, you can still amend it. And
all right,
so if whatever you're voting on this time will just be to have the amendment.
We eventually will work our way back up the
Right.
line to the original
And then Mr.
motion.
Costales can make his motions and whoever else to
Correct.
tweak that.
Yeah. So, all right, Madam Clerk, would you read the amendment to the amendment, please?
Okay, the amendment is to replace the full-time firefighter position with the full-time training officer position, add in the police position, remove the HR administrative assistant position, and also add back in the local match for historic preservation grant and the internship program.
All right, take the vote, please.
Branch,
No.
Costales,
Aye.
Graham,
Nope.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
No.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather, not here, Scrivener,
No.
Ward,
No.
Bray.
Aye.
Is this what we were voting on? Okay.
5 noes, 4 yeses.
All right, so the amendment to the amendment fails. And we are back to the original amendment. Madam Clerk, would you read the original amendment, please? Excuse me, okay. Mr. Scrivener?
We were voting on this, on Mr. Mahalovich's amendment to my amendment. Now we're at the,
So we're back to your
we're
amendment?
back to my amendment.
Yes. So, Madam Clerk, would you read the amendment, please? The original amendment, where we're back to now.
Is amend the motion to fund a full-time training officer rather than a full-time firefighter, add in the HR administrative assistant, remove the 4% bonus given to the 3 fire captains, remove the internship program, and remove the local match for historic preservation grant.
Any discussion on the amendment before we vote? Seeing no more.
Mr. Bray, I was just going to indicate, Sheila, is the motion that's on the table now on the board?
Yes.
Just so if anybody has any questions about what's there, you can take a look.
Yeah, let's take a minute, give you a minute to see what that looks like. What is that figure in the green, please?
7801,
Thank you.
47.
To the
7,000,
Yes.
yeah.
in the black. All right, believe you everyone's ready to vote. Take the vote, please.
Branch,
Aye.
Costales,
Aye.
Graham,
Nay.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey, Bray?
Yes.
So,
Nay.
I thought he said yes.
So that fails. Then we are back to the main motion.
I think you're done. You start over.
It passed? I'm sorry. It was passed. All right. So we adopted the amendment, right?
Yes.
All right. The main shall we, you care to read the main motion? So we're back to the main motion as amended. And that is reflected on our screens.
Yes.
Motion was to adopt Mr. Bray's working budget as the budget document and include the full-time training officer instead of a full-time firefighter, fund the HR administrative assistant, remove the 4% bonus given to 3 fire captains, remove the internship program and local match for historic preservation grant.
All right. That's our motion now. Any discussion on the motion? I'm going to let that dangle for a minute. Mr. Mihaljevic?
I move we recess. 5 minutes.
Drew, the motion to recess for 5 minutes.
The chair can grant it.
So granted. We'll take 5 minutes. We're back.
Print those off.
Back here at 7:05. There will be 2 or 3 minutes. 2 or 3 minutes. We're going to get, the staff is getting a printed version for us of what's on this screen here. So it'll just take a minute to do that. All right, we'll get ready to get started again.
Yeah, it's fine. That's it. Well, you can give it out. I can see the board.
Kara's printing some more.
Okay.
All right, we will start again, and we'll start with Mr. Betts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so wanted the council to know that one of the numbers that was on the board for the removal of the holiday, we had at 60,000. We've actually corrected the number to what the cost would be, and it's to 60,684.46. So just wanted you to know. So instead of having 7,900 to the good, right now we're $8,485 to the good. So just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that change.
And we are back. Thank you so much for that. And we're now discussing the main motion. And I recognize Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'm actually going to make an amendment. I want to make an amendment to this motion that we actually, at this time, remove the administrative position for HR position and add Public Works street worker position.
It's moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, can you read that back, please?
We're amending the motion to remove the HR administrative assistant and add in a public works position.
Discussion? I believe we're ready to vote. Take the vote, please.
Branch?
No.
Costales?
No.
Graham?
Give us 1 second there.
Sorry, I'm going. Oh, no, you're fine.
One up. There you go. Go up so they can see the green. There you go. The cost of a street worker is $50,520.06. So it does decrease us from the 8,500 I believe we have, and moves us to 6,580 to the good.
I know we're in the middle of a vote, but looking at the paperwork we were given earlier, they had 2 street positions for 85,000, so half of that's 42.5. Maybe that didn't include benefits or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, the number for a street worker with benefits and everything included is 50,000.
Okay.
520.
So,
I still second the motion.
so I have a question for you, Bill. So this 53, is that just the high end, or is that the middle, or what is
No,
that?
the 50,520, that's benefits and everything, and that's the low end. That's the low end for a new street worker that we would go get. So that includes benefits, health insurance, all of those kind of things. Same way with the police officer, that would be the low end, and the same way for the fire training
Okay,
officer.
thanks for clearing. I didn't know if that was in the middle of that, or if that was the
No, sir.
extreme high.
Nope.
Okay.
All right, we'll start the vote again, please.
Branch?
No.
Costales?
No.
Graham?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Hussey?
No.
Mahalovich?
Yes.
Scrivener?
Yes.
Ward?
No.
Bray?
Yes.
5 yeses, 4 noes.
So that passed. We're back to the main. So that amendment passed. So now we have a street worker. Street worker is in, an administrative position is out. All right, the floor is open. I saw Mr. Costales over here.
I'd like to amend, and again, remove funding for the security and the training and education for the mayor and the council.
No.
No.
No,
I'll
it's
put them back in.
Yes.
All right, moved, and is there a second?
I second that.
And you second it. Carlos, Mr. Graham second. Any discussion? Mr. Hussey?
I sort of wish you would have made this amendment separate, because I can understand removing security, but I still stand by earlier in the budget process on the training side of things that it's not a lot. It's $1,400, and I think it sends the signal that there's a desire for the council and the elected officials to have some funds to be trained. I think we could have new council members coming on board in April, attendance at MML events, and I know that your point was they could come to the council and ask for that training, but I sort of like leaving that in. So I'm going to vote no on the amendment, but had you separated the two, I probably would vote yes on the security and no on the training.
Mr. Scrivener?
One thing I think that we've kind of devolved into is that we're starting to consider this document as a whole, and we can sit here all night and keep amending it by changing one item or two items or whatever. But really, what this has done is taken the place of our parking lot. We really ought to have this become our parking lot, if you will, and go back and start working on these things one at a time instead of sitting here and just repeatedly amending this. I mean, I guess it has the same result, and maybe that's okay. Maybe we're fine doing that, but that's kind of what we've kind of started doing. So maybe it accomplishes the same thing, and there's really no reason to be critical of doing it that way. But
Mr. Mihaljevic?
I too going to vote against this. I think and maybe for a different reason. I think for the public safety, not only council but our many guests that come here, that having a bit of security is a good idea. My first cousin was involved in a councilman in Pleasantville, Iowa, where they shot and killed the mayor and one other councilman. Not that ever happened here, and God forbid it, but it's a small change to pay for our safety of the council and our public.
Mr. Costales?
And yet every budget meeting we've had, that security guard has not been screening anybody coming into the building, nor during the weekday when we have council meetings, they don't come in and sweep the buildings, where somebody could come in during the day and hide a weapon, or come in 10 minutes before that guy or come in right before 5 o'clock. They don't go back and screen everybody that's already in the building.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, I was trying to get your attention. We're here at first base. I think it's your first base, right?
Yes.
Obviously, I think security is very important. For a long time, we did not have security. We do have some, obviously some security, which I don't think we need to talk about necessarily this evening. I think that's not a very good play at this point in time. But the detectors that we have here, or the detector we have outside, and the amount that it takes to run those, I think $1,500 is well worth that. And it's here for our court system anyway, so it's a tool that's utilized, can be very easily utilized. And as Rick said, I think for the safety of our staff, our employees, obviously you all, and the public that meets here, I think is very, very, very important. And I think it's definitely worth $1,500 a year.
All right. Any other discussion, Mr. Scrivener?
That's just slightly more than $50 a meeting. We have 2 meetings a week. I guess it's less than that, actually. Not 2 meetings a week, but 2 meetings a month. So even though I don't personally feel any risk, I've never felt any fear at all for my own personal well-being. I did have a couple of different people say that, public, said pretty strongly that we ought to spend the money, if we don't need to protect ourselves, to protect the public that attends the meeting. So even though my initial inclination was to say we don't need it, I talked against it when we were first putting it in. Now that we've got it and no more than it costs, I think I would vote against taking it out.
All right, Mr. Henry?
Call for the question.
Call for the question. Is that a second?
Requires a second, and if there is one, you vote without discussion.
I second that.
Okay, all those that want to call for the question, say aye.
Aye.
Question is called. Madam Clerk, read the motion, please, the amendment to the motion.
The amendment to the motion was to remove the council security and council training education from the budget.
All right, and the vote?
Branch,
No.
Costales,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
No.
Hussey,
No.
Mahalovich,
No.
Scrivener,
No.
Ward,
No.
Gray.
No.
7-2.
7-2. That amendment fails. We're back to the main motion. Mr. Hussey?
We've focused a lot of our amendments and discussion on the personnel side of things tonight, but, you know, we're financing some of this based off of removing the holiday, reducing the self-insurance from the budget, which is kind of a policy decision then that we're making, right? I mean, we've presented on the healthcare and some options, but, you know, the excess that we're really working with is really, it seems like in large part those two items make up a lot of it. And I guess I just throw out to think that, you know, it's easy to, is the holiday worth it? Is it not worth it? We've talked about a floating holiday last year. This is a permanent holiday. You know, how do we prioritize some of these things? And so, like, removing the self-insurance from the budget, is that something, you know, Steve, that and Gail and HR, that we're okay with? That's the savings we're going to, that's a number we're comfortable putting in there, and that we're going to be okay when it comes to providing for our employees, and that we'll be able to maintain the benefits as we desire.
If we provided, we talked about several health insurance options. One of those was to keep our current plan the way it is and pay the 18%, however you want to divide it up between city employees. The other was to pick a 14% plan, however you want to divide that up between city and employees. The other was to have 4 options. If we do those 4 options, then there is this savings on the health and on the self-insurance piece. One of the recommendations was to use that and divide that out among the employees, since they are going to be taking a more difficult position in the health insurance as a result of a couple of things. Most of it just going from a 90-10 to an 80-20. So the savings opportunity is there. Where it gets used is obviously a council decision.
Yeah, and I guess I asked that and bring that up just to say that, you know, we're still kind of in the middle of some of this healthcare decision and numbers are at, but by including that right here in this budget, we're making that statement to say, instead of exploring the option of splitting that up in a way amongst employees or through the benefit package, we're choosing to fund things off our parking lot with it tonight. I just highlight it to bring it up to say that it's easy for it to get lost and it's new money that we've added to it, but that is a big thing in there, and that's a large amount of money, and that's a big statement I think that we're making. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I just want to make sure that we don't sweep it aside and just spend it, you know, free will here.
Thank you. Mr. Scrivener?
The only thing, Mr. Hussey, we're funding the fire training officer because fire chief recommended it. We're funding the police officer because its chief recommended it. We're funding if this goes through, we're funding a street worker because the director recommended it, and we're taking that $100,000 in savings because the director recommended it. So every one of these actions that we've taken has been upon the recommendation of a staff member, upper management. So apparently they view these employment positions to be more necessary than funding that additional deduction from the insurance. I mean all those were presentations by management.
All right, any other comments, questions on the main motion? Ms. Ward?
I don't know if this is the place to ask this question or not. You can stop me. I have a question regarding the GPS system. I am totally for purchasing this piece of equipment. However, didn't we discuss purchasing that now with the fund revenue and it not being part of our budget for 2015? And if that was so, it would free up $18,900, and with the 6580, that would give us 25 to perhaps fund a part-time HR person. I'm just trying to get the HR department some help. I mean,
Yeah, is that a question? I can certainly
Go ahead, Mr.
respond. I think the HR one is whether it's full-time or 2 part-times, whatever is important as well. One thing to remember, though, and so yes, at one point council did talk about funding that piece of equipment out of the fund balance, which is a one-time purchase as opposed to personnel, which is a reoccurring expense. But yes, they did talk about that.
Other comments, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, Mr. Bray. One thing that I know we've kind of passed over again, and I think to Mr. Scrivener's point, that all the numbers and all the added changes that you've seen here are from a director's point of view. I think Steve had a very good argument when we talked about the addition of President's Day. And I wonder if I could ask Mr. Betts if the reduced sales tax number that's up there now, is that a correct number with the changes that he sent out to the council today, or is there actually more funding in this particular scenario to possibly fund a holiday than what we're seeing?
Mr. Betts?
Yes.
You care to?
Yes, sure, I could. The way that we arrived at the number there for the reduced sales tax was council asked us to look at the previous 36 months worth of receipts that we received for that. We've run those numbers for the previous 36 months as of the latest date that we have. And that 3-year average would bring us to $9,772,508.57. So that is a reduction. So that would what the reduction would really be would be $27,491.43 as opposed to the $56,004.50. So there is, if the question is for me, based on the 36 months that the council asked us to use, that would be the number that we would put on the board if somebody made that motion.
All right, thank you. Let's see, and Madam Clerk, the main motion is this budget as amended.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes. Thank you.
Motion is to use Councilman Bray's document as a guideline for the budget to replace the full-time firefighter position with a full-time training officer, fund the full-time police officer position, fund a street worker position, remove the 4% bonus given to 3 fire captains, remove the internship program, and remove the local historic preservation grant.
Mr. Mihalovich?
Again, I think people ought to be reminded that this does include the 2% salary increase.
Yes.
And the other caveats that was brought forth to us, $25,000 added to transit for the St. Mary's.
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing any other big highlights?
The health insurance.
In the health insurance.
Which the health insurance overall was a decrease in what was in the budget. We had 10% in the budget. Overall health insurance will be about 6 or 7%, but it's the what Councilmember Hussey mentioned earlier, how that gets split.
Oh, Mr. Scrivener.
You know, I would like to thank the mayor for bringing that up about revenue, because I'd forgotten about that. We did go through in our first meeting and decide that we would ask the finance department to use a particular formula for determining revenue adjustment. And at that time, they didn't have the benefit of the latest sales tax revenue, and so they calculated a number, and the number that's up there now is the number that they calculated without the benefit of the latest numbers. The latest numbers were significantly increased enough that if they use the formula that we told them to use, that red number would be less red. It would actually be 27,491. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As opposed to 56,0450. And haven't really talked to the rest of the council about this, but I personally am willing to make a motion that we use the number 27,491 as opposed to 56,0450 in calculating revenue. I know that's not quite as conservative as what we had approached before, but it is using the formula that we told them to use, which, Bill, you might remind us what that formula was, but that's my motion.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Is that Mr. Hussey? And the figure was 27,491?
27,491.
Discussion? Mr. Costales?
As Councilman Prather brought up at the time, and several of us agreed with him, we'd rather be a bit on the conservative side. And let's have positives down the road versus be running short of money down the road.
For point of clarification, I think this formula represents Mr. Prather's request of 36 months. Isn't that right?
That's a correct
Yes.
statement.
Yes.
So this number
I realize
is
that.
even more.
He was wanting to be conservative, and
Yes.
so am I. I'd rather have a surplus down the road than be a minus.
Other comments before we vote? All right, let's have the roll, please.
Okay. Branch,
Aye.
Costales,
No.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich, Scrivener,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Passes. 7-2.
It passes 7-2. Recalculate.
Looks like the number to the positive now is $35,094.43.
And if we don't spend it tonight, we can spend it some other time. Yeah. All right, we're back to the main motion as amended. Any other discussion, comments, any other? I'm sorry, what?
I have a question. Going back to what Councilwoman Ward was talking about as relates to the 18.9 for the GPS. Can that be taken out and put into the budget we have right now? So to take the 18.9 off to increase the expense. So I'm asking to remove that from this year's budget. We fund that now.
I see. So your motion is to take the GPS out of this budget?
Correct. To take that 18.9 off of this year.
All right. There it is. GPS for engineering at 18.9. I'm sorry, is there a second to that?
Second.
I got Miss Ward over here. Moved and seconded to take the GPS for engineering out of the budget. Moved and seconded. Discussion? If not,
Can I just want to make a point of clarification just for the purchasing purposes here? We probably would not be able, unless Matt can correct me, but I doubt we'd be able to order that and get that in based on our purchasing rules by the end of the month. Now, Matt may knows something that I don't. And we might.
Well,
be
and it
able
also depends on the source of funding.
Right.
If it's, are
We
they
do a
talking about
supplemental.
sales tax is what I thought they were talking about earlier, or what?
yeah. We'd probably do a supplemental appropriation.
Oh, okay.
So all I'm saying is that we
Yeah, I
probably
mean,
go
you
to a supplemental
wouldn't receive it,
appropriation.
but
It would take some time, but it could be done. Just wanted everyone to know it wouldn't be part of
quicker
the.
than if it was in the budget, because you'd have to wait till it was adopted.
Yes, right.
Fine.
All right, any other discussion? All right, let's take the roll, please.
Branch,
Aye.
Costales,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Bray.
Aye. All right, so GPS is out of the budget, and we're recalculating.
The new number to the good is $53,994.43.
Mr. Scrivener?
Okay, I had suggested that we do that in a previous meeting, and I also suggested, which I think will be a lot harder sell, but I had suggested that we also fund, I think it's $117,000 for 4 cars that you were going to take out of sales tax?
I think it's 108, but yes.
108?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've suggested that we take the 108 out of this year's fund balance as well, freeing it up in the 2015 budget. If you don't spend it next year, it'll just go to surplus and replace what you took out anyway. So it's really just a matter of how you do it. We would reduce our fund balance by the 108 before the end of this year. Maybe you can't get them bought before the end of the year. I don't know, but if we did that, then that would make the money available in 2015. Doesn't mean we have to spend it just because it's available. It just means that later in the year, if there's something that has been on here that you want to fund, you'll have $108,000 in 15 to fund it.
So your amendment is?
Hold on, can I I may have given you the wrong number. I think I
Is it
misinterpreted.
117 instead?
Yeah.
It was 5, wasn't it?
It's 5.
It's
yes,
5.
That's. Give me one moment, and I'll give you the exact number there. Yes, purchase.
It
I
was-
really would like to get that money out of that sales tax. I just
Okay.
don't like that
Well,
money
that's
coming
my
out of
question.
sales
Are you
tax.
talking about taking we have 2 different areas where we're buying police vehicles.
Right.
One is from the sales tax, from the gleaning fund, as we like to call it, and one is from the
General revenue.
general
I
revenue.
don't want to do anything with general revenue.
Okay,
I want to fund that which we were planning to fund out of sales
Perfect.
tax F
Gotcha.
and fund it out of reserve instead.
That's 108, yes.
It's 108.
Yes.
Okay.
And how does
So
that?
my motion would be to remove the 108 from the 2015 budget for the police cars, with the understanding that I know that we're not dealing with business in the 2014 budget right now, but my motion is with the understanding that we'll do that.
Yeah, that would be a different piece
I understand
of
it's a different piece of business,
All right,
but
all right.
but just so anybody that's thinking about voting for it, that's what I'm proposing.
Okay. So the amendment is to remove the 108,000 out of this budget.
And let me say one other thing in clarification of and I know I don't have a second yet, but if you do what I'm proposing, then you will have $108,000 still in capital improvement, or in that capital improvement sales tax fund that you could use to fund the air conditioner, or you could use to fund an emergency of some kind in capital, like a sinkhole or whatever, which if you take that money out of capital improvements, then you've got to turn around and fund the sinkhole or fund the air conditioner or whatever out of general revenue. So, I mean, the money is there both ways. It's just a matter of what you designate the money to be used for. So that's why I'm saying leave that capital improvement money for capital improvement purposes and fund this, get the cars, if they need the cars. If you're not going to vote for the cars, fine, you wouldn't vote for them out of the capital improvements either. But you're going to vote, if you're going to vote to fund the cars, let's fund them out of general revenue in 2014.
All right. Is there a second? Is there a second to that Going once?
Second.
All right, it's moved in second then. Mr. Hussey?
This is just for clarity's sake. You're making a motion to basically the general revenue budget in front of us for 2015, but you're not really touching any of the money in the general revenue budget in 2015, correct? What you're saying is we're taking. What I'm getting at here is that you're amending something, but it's not really. It doesn't feel like it's actually germane to the original motion. It's almost like a separate motion dealing with a supplemental appropriation, and I bring that up to say I feel like we're actually muddying the waters here, and that we should handle that separately because it's not.
You're right,
impacting
because
this
it
budget.
is out. You wait a minute.
When we approve this budget, it does approve the capital sales tax expenditures as well. So I do believe your motion is is right for this meeting. So just because if you guys go forth and you approve a budget to forward onto the council as a whole, and you come in on the 20th and approve it, whatever is part of the capital improvements is what we will be spending from. That's the way we interpret the budget to be approved. So it's the whole book. Yes. Yes. So so we're not. I know we're spending a lot of time on the general fund, but we've also wastewater, parks, all of those. When we approve this budget, we're approving all of those budgets. So.
And so the motion is to remove $108,000 out of this budget.
The way I interpreted the motion was to move $108,000 out of the sales tax budget for the coming year, and to do a supplemental, and use a supplemental
And then as a separate
appropriation.
piece of business.
Doesn't impact general fund except for the fund balance. So
But the purchase would take place later through another council action.
that's correct.
Mr. Costales?
That 108,000, that's for how many vehicles again?
That's for 4 police cars.
Sounds awful low. 25,000 a car?
About 27,000, yes. That isn't. They use capital improvement money to buy the equipment that goes with those. So that there's, I don't know exactly how much.
The reason I think it's low is we just spent $42,000 for meter-maid cars for each one. And now we're buying a police vehicle for 27. I mean, that's why the numbers aren't making any sense in my head.
Mr. Henry?
Call for the question.
Call for the question. Second. All in favor of calling for the question, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, call for the question. Madam Clerk, take the roll.
Branch? To remove $108,000 from the sales tax budget for police vehicles.
Aye.
Costales?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Hussey?
Aye.
Mahalovich?
Aye.
Scribner?
Aye.
Ward?
Aye.
Bray?
Aye. Passed.
What about the other 5?
Excuse me.
In the 15 budget? Okay.
So, Sheila, we are calculating.
That will have no effect on this.
Right.
Okay. Right. All right, is there, Mr. Henry?
We're back on the original.
We're back to the original motion.
I call the question for the original motion.
I second that.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of calling for the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Madam Clerk, we shall vote on the original motion. As is represented on the,
I believe that's correct. Yes. What you see on the board is what the motion would be. So.
we believe that, yes. All right, Madam Clerk, would you read that motion, please? I know. Good luck.
Just say that.
Yeah, say that. We'll just refer to this, okay?
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead and take the roll.
Okay.
The vote.
Branch?
No.
Costales?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Hussey?
No.
Mahalovich?
Aye.
Scribner?
Aye.
Ward?
No.
Bray?
Aye.
Passes 6 to 3.
It passes 6-3. Now, I believe that kind of concludes our business.
So,
Mr. Hussey?
for clarity's sake, we have passed this as our budget. That's what we have just said. I'm watching your two reaction, which are different.
This is the budget. If we adjourn tonight, this has been passed as the budget. If you all, but until you all adjourn, you can still change it.
And just to clarify, when he says it's the committee that would be passing the budget on to the council, so the 20th is still the key meeting to. It still could be amended at the council. And obviously, probably want to fix it at the committee, but
So some other reductions wanted to come, we could do it at that point, before that point.
It's a lot easier to do them now, but yes.
I was just asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go with Mr. Costello.
Okay. For staff.
I'd like to make an amendment and add the HR position back in.
Second.
Mr. Hilbert, are you listening to this?
I think that's fine.
I'm sorry, we were discussing a wastewater thing. What was the question?
I think it's the motion and the second are fine. I mean,
Yes.
Yep.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Would you repeat that, please?
I'd like to make a motion to add the HR
Add the
position
HR
back in. Make an amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All right, let's vote, please.
Branch,
Aye.
Costales,
Aye.
Graham,
Nay.
Henry,
Nay.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich, Scrivener,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Bray.
Aye.
Passes 6-3.
6-3, passes. HR position is in the budget at this point. Mr.
I
Hilbert?
have a question. Matt and I were talking about it, but I'm hoping Matt will ask it.
Yeah, I can ask, just so clarification, we had some wastewater things on the parking lot, the old parking lot, so I noticed when he was saying adjourn, I just want to get clarification on that before Monday, for the next council meeting. Was it on or off, or?
Right. Yeah, and the wastewater parking lot is a different tab, and I actually was going to point that out before the end of the meeting, so thanks, Matt. So just I was trying to get to the other tab, but if we would need to come and also approve this parking lot as well. This is the only other change you made to other funds. So, and this is for, we would be taking this out of their fund balance, so.
Would you summarize that answer again, please?
Yeah, basically, what we put on the parking lot was $1,419,000 worth of items to take out of the wastewater fund balance. So that was a motion that was made at one of the, I believe, when wastewater did their presentation. So probably before tonight, we would want to also go ahead and pass this parking lot as well onto the council as a whole. So,
Okay. Mr. Scrivener?
Mr. Chairman, I made the original motion to put these items on the parking lot. Now I'll make the motion to adopt these items that we've put on the parking lot as part of the 2015 budget. That would be fund replacement of Woodward subdivision, $120,000, fund pump replacement at Westview Heights, $20,000, funds Sharon Drive pump station elimination, $350, replacement of blowers at treatment plant, $670, jetter truck replacement, $250, and replacement of security lighting at plant, $9,000. That would come out of the wastewater fund balance.
I second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Mr. Hussey?
I just have a quick question for Mr. Marash. It's a lot to fund. Are all these projects doable within 2015?
Yes, we believe so, that we had requested them in there. I think there's a issue of what the fund reserve was or wasn't at that time.
Mr. Scrivener?
Isn't there on some of these issues, like the Woodward subdivision, Westview Heights, and so forth, those are actually potential problems with EPA or DNR if we have overflows, et cetera, et cetera. Is that not the case on those?
That's true. And, when I say that, there's always right-of-way issues may pop up and things like that, but we need, if we have a funded project, we get the design going, start trying to buy that right-of-way. there's an outside chance it may linger on, but this money just does roll back into the balance if not spent. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion before we vote? If not, you're ready to vote. Madam Clerk?
Branch,
Aye.
Costales.
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Bray.
Aye. Passes. Mr. Mahalovich?
Wasn't there something on Hazelton that needed to be replaced? Did it not make it? Or did I miss that?
I think it's contained in a later year of the budget.
Okay.
Anyone else? What's the wish of the committee? I asked what the committee wishes to do right now. Mr. Grant?
I wish to have another discussion about a possible cut. I know a couple of weeks ago I had asked for the total amount for, while I am a big advocate for education, certainly advocate for that 1,000% as well. However, looking at our number up there and then looking at what's being requested for total tuition reimbursement request for 2015, I think it's $27,130. I am, since that's not inclusive of everybody, it's just certain departments, I am asking for tuition reimbursement to be removed.
There's a motion to amend. It lacks a second. Dies two do lack of second. Anyone else? Any other business? Mr. Hussey?
Dare I say move to adjourn?
I second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.